Well, it's a big word. I mean, even philosophers are trying to answer what is culture, and then you are asking what is subculture. Um, I believe in the modern university tradition, culture or subculture should be searching for knowledge, searching for wisdom, in order to answer contemporary, individual and collective challenges we may have in society, as well as to pursue future challenges we may have. I mean, that's the modern university philosophy should be. But if you are pertaining to the use of that term in Sri Lankan context, there seems to be a different understanding. It is because within the university they call it oneness. They try to make everybody one, therefore there is a subculture. But unfortunately that trying to build the oneness is a very noble thought, is happening at extreme violent forms, which we cannot in the 21st century tolerate, encourage or institutionalize. So I would say subculture in an internationalized world will be to uphold human rights, be sensitive to the other who is different to us, be it ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, regionalism, appearance of a person, and all those issues are secondary. Universities should be places of higher learning in order to uphold quality of humanity and quality of life. Absolutely not. How can I say? Can I say it loud enough to until the Indian Ocean hears this? There cannot be and there should not be. Because we are a society that has gone through absolute amount of violence. State violence versus citizens, then armed group violence against state, then communities versus communities. It's enough that we have used violence as a language in our modern civilization. It must be stopped, and it must be stopped now, not tomorrow. I'm very firm on that. So there is no room for ragging. There shouldn't be any room for ragging. But unfortunately, on record, let me tell you this. About 3% of the university population, student population as well as academia, unfortunately, are either blind eye or indirect promoters of this, which is one of the major reasons why we can't have a dialogical and rationalized solution to this. But all of them are people who, most of them are people who demanded a system change. System change does not come by burning the other's house or chasing one person by one name. System change happens within you. The way you are willing to respect me, and the way I am willing to respect you, irrespective of what you are from. And then the meetings of the minds in order to build a new society based on 21st century's values. And that's where the system change should come. So, to answer your question directly, my aim is to not to impose rules. You know, anti-ragging rule is there, 1998, Act number 20. Yeah. But I want agreement of the souls, of the societies, of the heart, of the minds. How shall we live better tomorrow, as Canadian philosopher Charles Taylor asked once. If the majority of the Z generation are in that way, I think others will have to listen to that. Whatever political ideology, whatever radical view that we may have, but it stops where the human rights issues are. So, Sri Lankan Constitution, in par with the Geneva Convention and also UN Charter on Human Rights, completely recognizes the right to freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of mobility, freedom of assembly, and the right to live. But what we see in our universities, unfortunately, some have even no right to have their meals. So that I think society needs to, the citizens of this country need, It's not just Raghavan's project, or it's not Ranil's project or Susil Prem Jayanth's project. No. It should be citizens who are asking these questions. So I would really ask the journalists like you, who possibly have a hope for the future, that you propagate that question, socialize and epicentric that question, ask the people, what kind of culture do we need? Last year we invested, I use the word invested because I really believe higher education is our investment, 89 billion rupees with all these difficulties. And this year we are arguing, I am arguing for 100 billion rupees investment from the government for higher education. But one must ask the question, for what are we doing this? The citizen has the right to, Hambantota fisherman asked me this question. I mean, some people are saying that there is structural injustice, therefore oneness need to be built, and therefore sometimes it has to be by force. And I reject that ideology. Because let me tell you, a Hambantota fisherman called me just about 4 days ago. He's known to me, and his daughter has been selected to the university, he thinks. We haven't released the results yet. She had good results. And so therefore he called me and asked, what is happening in the university is, can you guarantee the security of our children? It's a valid question that parents should ask. Then he went on to say that he as a fisherman, there is a lot of problem, ice, because power cut is there is no ice. So he had to sell his harvest, his catch by end of the day because there is no preservative mechanisms. With that little money, asking, because he had to sell it at the asking price, not the giving price. When he went to the marketplace, he remembered his daughter, second daughter, asked him to buy some sanitary napkins. But when he had checked the prices of the other goods, he couldn't buy that. So he said, I bought the rice and the karavala and other stuff. I went home. So my daughter didn't go to school for 4 days. That's the social injustice that we must fight against. That's structural violence against humanity. So educated people in this country whom we are investing on should find answers to it. And our effort should be in order to bring upon a wider social dialogue. We may disagree, but we still agree to be in the dialogue, but no room for violence. And for what kind of Sri Lanka are you hoping to either live or to leave behind? Some want to leave the country, okay, that's their freedom. But at least what kind of Sri Lanka do you want to leave behind is a question that Generation Z must ask. Luckily for us, 97% of younger people want to live a modern life, free of any oppression, either it's government or otherwise, free of oppression from any political party, within the university or outside, holding on to liberal values of respecting each other, irrespective of who you are. And that's the kind of world they are dreaming and demanding. So I think as adults and responsible policymakers, our effort should be 100% guarantee that. And that's my effort will be. This is, you are now touching the epicenter of the issue. 1998, there must have been a reason to bring that. I mean, now, 24 years ago, actually almost one generation before the act was brought and enacted, and it very clearly says if one is found guilty after a fair trial, from 2 years to 10 years imprisonment, and bail is only granted by a High Court judge. Right? So very clearly said. But your question is why it's not been implemented? For two reasons, I believe. Reason number one is those victims who are finding very difficult to come out and make complaints because they have to live within the 4. Because this happens first year, second year, right? But they know that they have to live 4 years on university, on campus. So there's a fear of living in the same community whom you are going to complain. And then, of course, these 3% of the raggers are holding on the hegemony activities. So that fear is even deepened. Second, I think the university has no mechanism physical and otherwise mechanism to segregate them. But we have done that. Last year, 64 students who witnessed against ragging, we took them away and gave other universities. Some of them were given foreign scholarships also, wherever the same degrees meeting with their requirements. So that mechanism is on now, and there are 17 gender centers in the universities now. We are expanding them to make them gender inclusive, but also human rights centers. And that human rights committee will be created by the university, not by outsiders, and they all will be linked to the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission directly. So the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission, so that we are trying to, and the police now is, of course, the police department had been advised to take complaints if you go to complain, if you are a university student. The police has a tendency of kind of ignoring it, because a lot of work once they say it's ragging, because they have to call for witnessing, that we have to visit the campus, they have to call the dean or the head of department, and then go for trial, and all those things are there. So they like to kind of, but very strict instructions have been given. In fact, the police department is present, Inspector General of Police is from University of Colombo, so he knows this. He's a graduate from the University of Colombo. So he knows this. I suppose they are taking some, within the law, some constructive measures to curb this issue. Yeah, so these numbers are very, shadow boxing, because the complaints don't come. We have a portal where people can complain. I think last 3 years there are about 3,500. I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but that's the kind of round number I remember.
You mean the complaints?
Complaints, yeah. But in Sri Lanka, this kind of complaints, it's only 5% comes out. So if you take that, if it is domestic violence or child abuse or whatever, only 5% comes to the public. You all know that. You are a student of sociology, you know this issue. So if you go by that rule, 5% of 3,000 means there have been nearly about, 30,000, 60,000 incidents at least. So that's a fairly big number if you prorate that whole graph. But large number of them are luckily still what we call is medium or lower level of violence. But where there have been surely high level of physical disability and suicides. I do not know, I don't remember any death on campus due to torture, but there have been, particularly this year, Vavuniya campus, the new campus, had students, 4 students were kept 4 days in a particular room, and the pictures came out, their back skin had been removed. Unbelievable, I can't even look at the pictures. So this is, violence that we cannot. This is international, against international law. This is why some of these same people on the street say we must go to Geneva and speak against violence in this society. But then when they go home, it's very, I think it's a paradox that we have to unreveal actually. Presently we have a system of student care by marshals. Some universities have student counselors, some universities have proctors, some universities have senior marshals and academic bodies who are looking into the ragging issue. So one thing, that's a good question. One thing that I found is that 17 universities, there is no uniformity, accepted best practice to handle ragging. So each university is doing what they think is best. For instance, if you take the extreme example of Peradeniya, over 1,000 acres of land, campuses are widespread. So their mechanism of monitoring and managing or reducing ragging will be much difficult than Colombo, which is only about 15 acres of land. So they have adapted their own models, but for the first time we had all the marshals meeting and ask when did they get training to handle ragging and to counsel these students. They said no. It's the first time we are meeting as all the marshals. The Colombo University marshal did not know the name and the telephone number of the marshal at Wafa, which is at town hall, right? So this is the kind of disconnectivity we have as a corporate approach to institutionalized approach to curb this common problem. So that is something that I have asked the University Grants Commission as well as what we call it the CVCD, Committee of Vice Chancellors and Directors. All the Vice Chancellors and Center Directors are together. So they are supposed to come out with a policy plan soon before the new university entrance batch is announced. Right then, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.